Bewitched, 1964 to 1972, captivated audiences with its magical charm and unforgettable cast. But what happened to the iconic stars after the show ended? Over 6 decades later, the beloved series actors have experienced fascinating journeys, from thriving careers to unexpected life changes. In this article, we revisit the lives of the cast in 2025, exploring their legacies, personal triumphs, and the moments that define their post-Bewitched years. Join us as we take a magical trip down memory lane and discover what became of the enchanting stars. Dick York, who was 36 years old when he first portrayed Darrin Stephens in Bewitched, 1964, embodied the role of a loving yet often bewildered husband trying to balance the everyday struggles of life with his wife Samantha's magical abilities. Off-screen, however, York's life was far from easy. In the early years of the show, he suffered a debilitating back injury, which led to chronic pain and an addiction to painkillers. This physical torment greatly impacted his mental health and career. Despite being married twice, his personal life was marked by hardship, including a divorce from his first wife, Joan Albury, and a second marriage to Mary, with whom he had 3 children. After leaving Bewitched in 1969 due to his health issues, York's life was plagued by financial and emotional struggles. He lived in seclusion for the final years of his life, battling emphysema and other health complications. Dick York passed away on February 20, 1992, at the age of 63. Agnes Morehead, who played the fiery Endora in Bewitched, was 64 years old when she began the role that became a staple of the show. Endora's sarcastic and powerful persona often clashed with her daughter Samantha's more serene life, creating comedic tension. In real life, Agnes's own emotional battles were far from a magical adventure. She was married once to actor Robert Gist, but the marriage ended in divorce, and she never remarried. Despite a successful career, Agnes struggled with loneliness and remained somewhat isolated, particularly as she grew older. Her health deteriorated as she fought a long battle with uterine cancer, which she kept largely private. She passed away on April 30, 1974, at the age of 73. Agnes's life, marked by both professional triumph and deep personal sorrow, ended too soon, and her passing left a void in Hollywood, where she had always felt somewhat apart. David White, who portrayed the ambitious advertising executive Larry Tate in Bewitched, was 48 years old when he began his role. Larry's character was a steady and loyal figure in the office, yet David's personal life was filled with struggle. His 2 marriages were unsuccessful, and his career never reached the prominence he had hoped for. David faced financial difficulties and personal frustrations, which were compounded by a series of health issues. As he aged, his heart problems worsened, leading to a sense of regret about what could have been. David's life ended on November 27, 1990, when he passed away from a heart attack at the age of 74. His death marked the end of a long career, which had seen him constantly striving for more, but ultimately ending in a quiet, unfulfilled conclusion. George Tobias played Abner Kravitz in Bewitched, 1964, at the age of 63. Abner was the long-suffering, often bewildered husband of the nosy Gladys, forever caught in her wild suspicions about Samantha's magical powers. Tobias brought an endearing frustration to the role, making Abner a relatable character in a sea of eccentric personalities. In his personal life, Tobias's journey was far from easy. He married twice, but both unions ended in divorce, leaving him without children and a sense of isolation in his later years. His professional success on Bewitched could not shield him from the struggles that followed, especially when he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. His health deteriorated rapidly, and he passed away on February 27, 1980, at the age of 78. His death, after a hard-fought battle with cancer, added a tragic dimension to his life, much like the quiet sorrow his character Abner often carried. Alice Pierce, who portrayed the nosy and paranoid neighbor Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched, 1964, was 47 years old when she began her iconic role. Gladys was the character constantly spying on Samantha and Darrin, convinced that something magical was always at play in their home. While Alice brought a unique comedic energy to the role, her personal life was marked by tremendous sorrow. Alice's career was already a late-blooming success, and while she had a long-standing marriage to her husband, her personal happiness was overshadowed by her health struggles. Tragically, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which she fought privately while filming. At just 48 years old, Alice passed away on March 3, 1966, leaving behind a beloved character but an unfulfilled life cut far too short by illness, her death forever linked to the sorrow of her untimely departure from both her career and the world. Dick Sargent, who stepped into the role of Darrin Stephens on Bewitched, 1969, at the age of 39, portrayed a similar character to his predecessor, yet with a more refined, reserved take on the bewildered husband dealing with his wife's magical escapades. Off-screen, however, Sargent's life was fraught with difficulties. A deeply private person, he struggled with the fear of coming out as gay in a time when homosexuality was not widely accepted in Hollywood. His first marriage ended in divorce, and he kept his sexuality hidden for many years. Eventually, he came out in the 1990s, but this public revelation came late in his life, adding emotional strain to his already complicated personal journey. In addition to his emotional struggles, Sargent battled prostate cancer for years, a disease that ultimately took his life on July 8, 1994, at the age of 64. Casey Rogers portrayed Louise Tate in Bewitched, 1966, at 41 years old. Louise was the patient and loving wife of Larry Tate, the supportive backbone to his often chaotic professional life. Though her character was relatively minor in the magic-filled world of Bewitched, Rogers's portrayal of Louise offered a calming presence. However, her own life off-screen was fraught with personal hardship. She was married to actor David Rentals, but their marriage ended in divorce, and she was forced to cope with the devastating loss of her young son, which left a lasting emotional scar. As she aged, Rogers's health began to decline, and she struggled with the effects of a debilitating stroke. The complications from this stroke ultimately claimed her life on July 6, 2006, at the age of 80. Her death was marked by the quiet tragedy of a life spent enduring private heartache, despite her long career in entertainment. Sandra Gould took over the role of Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched, 1966, at 50 years old. Gladys was the nosy, suspicious neighbor who became hysterical at the slightest sign of Samantha's magic. Gould brought an over-the-top energy to the role, making Gladys one of the show's most iconic characters. Despite her public persona, Gould's personal life was filled with turmoil. Her marriage was unhappy and eventually ended in divorce, and she had no children, which contributed to a sense of emotional isolation. After her time on Bewitched, Gould's mental health began to suffer, and she struggled deeply after the death of her mother, an event that left her devastated. Her health took a serious toll, and she passed away on July 20, 1999, at the age of 82 from a stroke. Gould's passing marked the end of a life that had been plagued by both personal and professional challenges, a tragic contrast to the lively character she portrayed on screen. Elizabeth Montgomery, who portrayed Samantha Stephens in Bewitched, 1964, was 31 years old when she began playing the iconic role of the kind-hearted witch. Samantha's struggle to balance her magical abilities with a normal suburban life, especially her marriage to the mortal Darrin, made her both relatable and endearing. Behind the scenes, Elizabeth's personal life was troubled by multiple failed marriages. Her first marriage to Frederick Kamen ended in divorce, followed by a brief union with actor Gid Young. Her most significant marriage to director William Asher ended after 13 years due to infidelities and emotional turmoil. Despite raising 3 children, Elizabeth's life was marked by bouts of depression and isolation. In 1995, at the age of 62, she tragically passed away from colorectal cancer, leaving behind a legacy of both fame and personal hardship that she had long kept hidden from the public. Bernard Fox, who portrayed the eccentric Dr. Bombay in Bewitched, 1966, was 39 years old when he took on the role of the quirky witch doctor who provided outrageous medical remedies. Dr. Bombay's eccentricity was both endearing and hilarious, often delivering laughs with his unusual treatments for Samantha's magical ailments. Bernard's life, however, was far from the comedic absurdity of his character. He married twice, and both relationships were plagued by infidelities and emotional turmoil. Despite a career that spanned over 5 decades, Bernard's personal life was filled with unspoken grief and loneliness, particularly as he grappled with the looming shadow of aging. He passed away on December 14, 2016, at the age of 89 due to heart failure. While his career was long and varied, his personal struggles, including heartache and health battles, followed him through the years, leaving him to ultimately face his final days in a quiet, somber manner. Marian Lauren, who played Aunt Clara in Bewitched, 1964, was 81 years old when she began playing the bumbling yet endearing witch. Aunt Clara, with her ever-malfunctioning magic, provided much of the show's charm and warmth, despite her constant failures. However, Marian's personal life was filled with hardship, despite her reputation for kindness and professionalism. She never married, a decision that was often said to stem from an early heartbreak, and she lived a quiet, lonely life. Marian's health deteriorated significantly in her later years, though she continued to work. Sadly, she passed away from a heart attack on May 9, 1968, at the age of 84, leaving behind a legacy of characters loved by fans but a life of solitude and struggles. Her death, though marked by decades of success, highlighted the deep sorrow of a woman who never found lasting happiness in her personal life. Mabel Albertson played Phyllis Stephens in Bewitched, 1964, at the age of 63. As Darrin's neurotic, meddling mother, she frequently brought chaos and comic tension to the Stephens household with her invasive and well-meaning interference. Despite her strong on-screen presence, Albertson's personal life was fraught with sadness. She married twice, but both relationships ended in heartbreak. Her first marriage ended in divorce, and her second, to actor and writer William H. Lemus, also faced turmoil, resulting in emotional strain. Albertson's life took a tragic turn when her health began to decline in the late 1970s, and she struggled with Alzheimer's disease in her final years. Her career, while impactful, was marred by her personal challenges, and she passed away on September 28, 1982, at the age of 81. The disease had taken a toll on her health, and her death marked the end of a tumultuous life, one that saw both professional success and personal struggles. Erin Murphy, who was only 2 years old when she began portraying the sweet and magical Tabitha Stephens on Bewitched, 1966, grew up in the spotlight, adored by audiences for her endearing portrayal of the witchy child of Samantha and Darrin. However, growing up as a child star brought its own challenges. Murphy struggled with the pressure of fame, particularly after Bewitched ended, when her career in Hollywood never fully recovered. She was married twice. Her first marriage ended in divorce, and her second marriage also faced emotional strain, leading to its eventual dissolution. Throughout her life, she faced public scrutiny, and the legacy of her childhood fame weighed heavily on her. While she had children, her family life was often overshadowed by the difficulty of balancing motherhood with her past as a TV star. Now 60, Erin Murphy has distanced herself from acting, focusing instead on family life and advocacy for child actors who face similar struggles. Alice Ghostley, who was 43 years old when she began playing the bumbling and shy witch Esmeralda in Bewitched, 1966, was beloved for her quirky portrayal that added to the show's comedic tone. While her character brought laughter to viewers, Ghostley's own life was marred by personal tragedy. Though she had a successful acting career, she never married and struggled with loneliness, a deeply private woman who sought refuge in her work. In the 1980s, Ghostley was devastated by the loss of close friends, and her personal life was marked by ongoing depression and a sense of isolation. Her health began to deteriorate in the 2000s, as she battled colon cancer, and later, a series of strokes. Alice Ghostley passed away on September 21, 2007, at 84, after years of battling illness. Her death was a somber end to a career marked by both professional triumph and personal heartache. Irene Vernon portrayed Louise Tate in Bewitched, 1964, at the age of 42. Louise was the understanding and supportive wife of Larry Tate, always standing by her husband's side in the fast-paced world of advertising, even when it clashed with her personal life. The character, though never in the spotlight, offered a sense of stability in a whirlwind of magical chaos. In reality, Vernon's life was far from the serene image she portrayed. Her marriage to actor and writer Ralph Bellamy ended in a bitter divorce, and she remained without children. Her personal life was filled with emotional turmoil, and her struggles continued in her later years, as she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure and coronary artery disease. These health battles eventually led to her death on April 21, 1998, at the age of 76. Vernon's passing marked the end of a life characterized by loneliness, professional highs, and private lows, a tragic reflection of her own struggles. Dick Wilson, who portrayed various drunk characters in Bewitched, 1965, was 49 years old when he began his role. Known for his comedic timing, Wilson brought levity to the series with his portrayal of inebriated characters, creating moments of humor amidst the magical chaos. Off-screen, however, Wilson's life was overshadowed by personal battles. While he enjoyed a successful career in television and film, his personal relationships were marked by struggle. He was married twice, but both marriages were troubled, particularly his first, which ended in divorce. Wilson faced the tragic loss of his daughter in an accident, an event that deeply affected him. He also suffered from a series of health problems in his later years, including heart issues and complications from old age. Dick Wilson passed away on November 19, 2007, at the age of 91 from natural causes, leaving behind a long career but a life scarred by both personal and familial grief. Maurice Evans portrayed Maurice, Samantha's father, in Bewitched, 1964, at 63 years old. Maurice was a powerful and flamboyant warlock, often disapproving of his daughter's moral marriage and offering a comedic yet stern presence in the show. Evans's portrayal of Maurice added a layer of depth to Bewitched, but his off-screen life was filled with deep personal turmoil. Evans had a tumultuous marriage to actress Judith Anderson, which ended in a bitter divorce. He also struggled with the isolation that often comes with fame, leaving him emotionally distant. His life was marked by the constant tension of balancing his career and personal woes. As he aged, Evans faced heart problems that plagued him in his later years. He passed away on March 12, 1989, at 87, from heart failure. Evans's death was a tragic end to a life filled with both immense talent and the personal cost of fame, leaving behind a legacy of roles that highlighted both strength and sorrow. Jill Foster, who played Betty in Bewitched, 1965, was 35 when she began her role as Darrin Stephens' loyal secretary. Betty's character was often seen assisting Darrin in his professional life, providing a calm and supportive presence amidst the chaos of the Stephens household. Behind the scenes, Jill's life was far from the easygoing nature of her character. She married once, but her union quickly crumbled under the weight of personal differences and emotional distance. With no children to focus on, Jill's life was filled with unspoken sorrow and a deep sense of loneliness. Her career never reached the heights of fame, and despite her role in the iconic show, she was often overlooked by the public. Jill passed away on March 24, 2017, at the age of 86, quietly slipping away after decades of solitude, with little recognition for her own struggles. Cosmo Sardo played an art gallery patron in Bewitched, 1965, at 56 years old. His role, though brief, added a touch of charm to the vibrant world of Bewitched. Sardo's time on the show was marked by his quiet presence in the background, yet his own life was anything but quiet. He faced personal difficulties that overshadowed his acting career, which was often filled with small, overlooked roles. Sardo married twice, both marriages fraught with tension and unhappiness, and he had no children to carry on his legacy. His later years were plagued by health issues, including severe bouts of depression and physical decline. As his body failed him, Sardo's once promising career fell into obscurity. He passed away on July 14, 1989, at the age of 80, leaving behind a life defined by lost opportunities and quiet sorrow. His death marked the end of an actor who had remained on the fringes of Hollywood's spotlight, a symbol of unfulfilled potential. Sarah Seagar played Agnes Baker in Bewitched, 1964, at the age of 50. Agnes is one of the many secondary characters who crosses paths with Samantha and Darrin, typically adding to the backdrop of their domestic life. While her role was small, Seagar's presence was noticeable in the world of magic and normalcy that the show portrayed. Seagar's own life, however, was far from serene. Her early years were marked by struggles in her personal life, with multiple failed marriages that left her emotionally scarred. She married twice and had one child, but neither of her relationships lasted, leaving her with a deep sense of loneliness. As she grew older, her health began to decline, and she faced severe health challenges that isolated her further. In the 1980s, Seagar was struck by a cerebral hemorrhage, a tragic end to a life that had already been filled with much sadness. She passed away on August 12, 1990, at the age of 76. Edward McKinley, who played Benson in Bewitched, 1967, was 51 years old when he began portraying one of Darrin's advertising clients. His character, a minor yet significant figure in the world of Bewitched, never seemed to capture the spotlight. Edward's personal life mirrored his career in its obscurity. Though married, he endured a troubled relationship with his wife, and they eventually divorced, leaving him to struggle with both personal and financial hardships. His lack of children only deepened the sense of emptiness that lingered throughout his life. Though he had an acting career that spanned many years, he never achieved lasting fame, and his later years were filled with regret over unfulfilled dreams. He passed away on July 30, 2004, at the age of 87, having lived through decades of personal disappointment and a quiet, uncelebrated existence. Paul Lynde played the mischievous Uncle Arthur in Bewitched, 1965, at the age of 39. His character was a humorous warlock with a penchant for practical jokes and witty one-liners, offering a light-hearted and chaotic contrast to the more serious characters around him. In real life, Paul struggled with personal demons that often overshadowed his comedic talents. He was openly gay at a time when it was socially unacceptable, which led to a series of lonely, unfulfilled relationships. Despite his fame and success, Paul's private life was marred by isolation and emotional conflict, unable to fully express himself in an era that condemned his identity. His marriage never materialized, and he had no children, living most of his life in solitude. His heart attack on January 10, 1982, at the age of 55, marked the tragic end of a life filled with both professional triumphs and deep personal sorrow. His death, at such a young age, seemed to encapsulate a life cut short by both health issues and the overwhelming weight of unspoken struggles. Parley Bear played the desk sergeant in Bewitched, 1966, at the age of 52. His character was a minor, though occasionally memorable, presence in the show, often acting as a reliable but underappreciated figure in the background. In the fast-paced world of Bewitched, he added a sense of everyday normalcy, contrasting with the magical chaos around him. Bear's career, though filled with a range of small but pivotal roles, never quite reached the heights of stardom. His life off-screen was marked by an unremarkable series of relationships, including a marriage to his wife, whom he divorced after many years of growing distance. He had children, though his role as a father was overshadowed by personal disappointments and the loneliness that defined much of his later life. Bear's health began to deteriorate in his final years, as he suffered a debilitating stroke that led to his passing on November 22, 2002, at the age of 88. Charles Lane played Ed Hotchkiss in Bewitched, 1965, beginning his role at 60 years old. Lane was the consummate character actor, often cast in roles like Hotchkiss, a client Darrin interacts with in the world of advertising. His contributions to the show were always reliable, but his own life outside of acting was marked by a series of personal and professional struggles. Lane had a series of marriages, with each relationship ending in disappointment. His final marriage was the one that seemed most enduring, but it too suffered from neglect and emotional distance. Lane had children but was never particularly close to them, adding a layer of isolation to his already challenging life. His career spanned decades, but he struggled to break into leading roles, and despite his vast experience, Lane never felt fully acknowledged for his contributions. In his later years, he faced the ravages of old age, battling illness and growing frailty. On July 9, 2007, Charles Lane passed away at the age of 102 due to natural causes. Richard X Slattery, who portrayed Police Officer No. 1 in Bewitched, 1965, was 40 when he began his role. His character, a minor law enforcement figure, was part of the show's occasional foray into the real world, where laws and magic would occasionally intersect. Though his role in the show was small, it marked the beginning of a life in Hollywood that would bring both success and hardship. Slattery's career was a series of fleeting roles in television and film, but his personal life was marred by deep personal struggles. He married twice, but both marriages ended in bitter divorces, leaving him with a deep sense of isolation and a fractured family life. Slattery also battled alcoholism throughout his life, which took a heavy toll on both his professional and personal relationships. His final years were filled with health issues, and his battle with his demons continued as he entered old age. Richard X Slattery passed away on January 27, 1997, at the age of 71, due to a stroke. Bernie Koppel, who portrayed the apothecary in Bewitched, 1969, was 36 when he started filming. His character, a magical figure who provided potions and remedies, added an extra layer of whimsy to the series. While Koppel's career soared in the 1970s and 1980s with appearances in various sitcoms and roles in soap operas, his personal life was overshadowed by pain. Koppel had a turbulent marriage that ended in divorce, and the emotional toll of the separation left him with an overwhelming sense of loss. Despite his professional success, he struggled with the pressures of fame, often feeling alienated from his own family. In the 1980s, he faced a difficult period of unemployment, making it hard to support himself after his initial fame faded. As of 2025, he is 91 years old, and though his career continues in a limited capacity, his personal life remains a quiet struggle against the passage of time and the ghosts of the past. Jack Collins portrayed Mr. Robbins in Bewitched, 1965, starting at the age of 47. His character, a seemingly minor client of Darrin's advertising firm, never took center stage but added subtle charm to the show with his occasional appearances. Despite his presence on the show, Jack's personal life was riddled with hardship and heartache. He had 2 marriages, both ending in sadness. His first wife passed away unexpectedly, and his second marriage ended in divorce, leaving him emotionally scarred. His career never took off in the way he hoped, and his time in Hollywood was marked by a series of forgettable roles. Jack's later years were marked by quiet struggles, his once promising career a distant memory. He passed away on January 31, 2005, at the age of 86, his life largely spent away from the public eye, his legacy overshadowed by personal turmoil and a lack of recognition. C. Lindsay Workman played Dr. Coblin in Bewitched, 1964, at the age of 40, a character who was a trusted medical advisor to the Stephens family. Despite being a regular on the show, Lindsay's personal life was full of emotional and professional struggles. His first marriage was marred by the emotional turmoil caused by his wife's mental health issues, which led to their divorce. His second marriage fared no better, and it too ended in separation. While his career remained steady, it was never exceptional, and Lindsay's work often went unnoticed by the public. His life after acting was marked by solitude and a deep sense of unfulfilled potential. C. Lindsay passed away on April 24, 2012, at the age of 88, following a brief illness. His death served as a poignant reminder of the quiet, unspoken struggles of an actor whose personal and professional lives were both full of heartache. Steve Franken played George Barkley in Bewitched, 1966, at the age of 34. George was a well-meaning, but often clueless, character who contributed to the show's humor through his interactions with Samantha and Darrin. Despite the early promise of his career, Franken's life took a tragic turn as he struggled with personal demons, including alcoholism and a lack of career fulfillment. His 2 marriages were both marked by infidelity and eventual divorce, and he became estranged from his children. The public's perception of him as a charming comedian was shattered by his battles behind the scenes. Despite continuing to work sporadically in television and film, he became increasingly isolated, and his later years were filled with depression and loneliness. Steve Franken passed away on August 24, 2012, at the age of 80, succumbing to cancer after years of battling personal and professional difficulties that overshadowed his earlier success. Paul Smith portrayed various policemen in Bewitched, 1966, starting at the age of 37. His roles often provided a touch of comic relief, with his characters appearing in humorous situations that helped to lighten the more fantastical moments of the show. Though he appeared frequently in Bewitched, his career was filled with many fleeting parts that never allowed him to become a household name. Smith's personal life mirrored this instability, as he had several troubled relationships, none of which seemed to provide him with lasting happiness. His marriage ended in divorce, and he had no children to anchor him in his later years. His struggles with depression and a sense of missed potential plagued him as he grew older. As he approached his twilight years, Smith faced numerous health issues that only worsened with time. On March 3, 2006, at the age of 77, Paul Smith passed away, his death largely unnoticed in the industry. Bernie Kuby portrayed a waiter in Bewitched, 1969, at 46 years old, often providing comic relief in several episodes. Although his acting brought joy to many, Kuby's personal life was a stark contrast to the cheerful roles he played on screen. His 2 marriages ended in bitter divorces, and he found himself estranged from his children, who later became distant figures in his life. He struggled with financial instability, despite his long career in television, and was often faced with the challenge of finding steady work. As the years went on, his mental health began to deteriorate, and he became increasingly withdrawn. His once promising career never materialized into the success he had hoped for, leaving him disillusioned with his choices. Bernie Kuby passed away on July 7, 2008, at 84 years old, and his final years were marked by loneliness, regret, and a growing sense of failure. Ronald Long portrayed Henry VIII in Bewitched, 1968, at 57 years old, adding a comedic historical twist to the show. Despite his memorable role, Long's personal life was filled with hardship and sorrow. He endured 2 failed marriages, each ending in bitter divorce, and he had no children to carry on his legacy. His career, while successful in its own right, never reached the levels of fame that he had hoped for, leaving him disillusioned with the entertainment industry. Long's health began to decline in his later years, and he faced severe heart problems, which weighed heavily on his spirit. Although he had periods of relative success, his personal challenges overshadowed his professional achievements, and he struggled with loneliness and regret. Ronald Long passed away on October 23, 1986, at the age of 75, due to heart failure, his life marked by both personal tragedies and the unfulfilled potential of a career that never quite lived up to its promise. Roy Roberts, who played Frank Stevens, Darrin's father, in Bewitched, 1967, at the age of 61, was a supporting character that brought both warmth and meddling to the show. His character was a well-meaning, but often intrusive, father-in-law, which reflected the complexity of his own personal life. Roy's real-life struggles mirrored those of his character. His first marriage ended in divorce after a series of infidelities, and his second marriage fell apart as well, leaving him with a sense of deep emotional isolation. While he had a long career in television, Roy's fame was limited, and he never achieved the recognition he deserved. By the time he passed away on May 28, 1975, at the age of 69 from a heart attack, he had already lived through a great deal of personal tragedy. His death marked the end of a life overshadowed by familial strife and professional underachievement. Jane Connell played Hepzibah in Bewitched, 1967, at the age of 42. Hepzibah was a stern and powerful witch who often added tension and intrigue to the show's magical world. Connell's professional career was thriving, and she continued to garner attention for her acting talent, but her personal life told a more tragic story. She married early in her life, but her marriage was filled with struggles and eventually ended in divorce. Raising 2 children as a single mother proved to be difficult, especially as her relationship with them became increasingly strained over the years. She faced financial challenges despite her successful acting career, and the emotional toll of her personal life affected her work. In her later years, Connell often spoke of the regret she felt for the emotional distance between her and her children. Jane Connell passed away on September 22, 2013, at 87, due to natural causes. Who is your favorite character from Bewitched? How do you feel knowing that some of the actors have passed away? Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this content, please remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss future videos. Thank you so much.